when all right, I think we're live here. All right, well, welcome back to I think hold on, I think we're live here. Yep. So welcome everyone to Chicago's #1 property management live webinar every week on Thursday. So this is number 12, I think, for us. If we're going to keep counting, hopefully we get to the point soon where we don't have to count anymore. How you doing, Tint?
Doing good, man. Yourself?
Not bad, not bad. What's the week on the South Side look like for you this week?
It's a good week. I finally got we talked about last week closing tomorrow on the flip deal, so the villages are finally letting us go. Weather seems to be nice. Like they're predicting. Did you see that they were predicting snow for a minute there yesterday or 2 days ago?
No, I didn't see that.
It never came, but my weather app for a little while was warning me there's snow coming. So luckily we missed that, and I think we have I think the worst of the storms are over. So when you get into the south suburbs, that's always the one concern, that the storms and tornadoes hit a little bit differently than they do in the city. But hopefully that's all, we're getting past that.
Well, man, you on the south side, I know my experience with my properties I've owned and where we manage still, we've always ran into the issue of the water backing up. But since they opened up the whole deep, they've been working out for decades, but since they really started utilizing the deep tunnel project to dump everything down there, Thornton, I feel we've had less issues. Would you share the same experience, or is it still bad?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the, what was it, 90, like late 90s when they had the whole downtown flood, because the thing that, so I mean, nothing like that. Here's the key to remember. If you have a house, especially on the south side, and I know there's some north side areas, but the south side especially, if you have a house that was built before the 60s, the reason you have a basement, and you'll notice you walk to the middle of it, there's a little sewer thing in the middle of the basement. The whole point of having a basement was your house is designed to take water from the sewer system when it overflows. So,
really?
Yeah, that's the whole point of a basement. Basements were never meant to be lived in. Basements were, you go to places like Texas or things like that, they don't have basements. Like, to them, basement's a foreign word. And it's because Chicago only has basements the way we do now because of the old sewer system. So the way that it works is when the sewer would take in too much water, it would exhale to basements, and then as the water flowed back to the lake, it would come back down. So that means one of two things. If you are going to build in a lake, you need to make sure you have, now granted, the sewer system is much better than it was, so it doesn't do it as often, but it's still designed that way. So you have two options. One is you can put a one-way valve in your sewer drain somewhere and get that done, so where the sewer water can't come up anymore. So that's an option. Or two, and
you're
maybe
referencing a backflow system.
Yes, thank you. Yes, a backflow system, which you're now legally allowed to do because the sewer system technically doesn't need your basement anymore. And then the other option thing I would do, and I would do this either way, is if you are going to build in your basement, to build up, meaning like don't have your floors on the floor, build a platform and have your floors a couple, a foot or so up. So that if the water does come in, you're not actually in the living space.
That's tough though for some people that have. I mean, that it's tough for tall people. Yeah, I could get away with that type of leverage.
Sure.
I think the best thing that ever happened, and I'll say this: you hit it on the head, where the basements become the relief for the city sewer. Where we get calls from the tenants saying, I have a foot of water in my basement. It's like, yeah, we'll be by in about 3 hours. We'll see how much is left and we'll help you clean. Because it's usually when I first got in this business, I'd show up with a pump or a team of guys with buckets and all this stuff. And by the time I got there, it was just a bunch of residue that was, don't get me wrong, it's very nasty. I'm not downplaying the tenant experience, but we were able to, it became more of a cleaning issue than it became a water backup or infiltration.
For sure. I want to see. I wish there was videos of that. You with a bunch of men walking in with cruising with buckets.
Yep. In my Dago tee and everything. So But what was it? I interrupted you before you gave a second thing. If you're gonna finish what are
Yeah,
what's
no,
the
the
second?
second thing I was saying is just is building up. You know, the
Oh,
second thing
building
was
up.
the building up high. Yeah, yeah. The backflow is the first thing, and then even building up steps, or the other option is sort of depending on how your basement is, find that sewer area and build around that. So you're not putting the bedroom where the sewer is. You'll see in some houses or some two flats that we've seen basement units in where you have the utilities and the furnace and stuff in the basement by the sewer area where the water's going to come up, and they're raised, obviously they're on platforms and stuff, but then the actual living space is far enough away from that where it's not going to be a huge issue when stuff comes up.
I've never installed anything like this, but what I've seen in some bungalows or single families in Chicago is almost like a cement kind of buildup around it.
Hmm.
Maybe a 3 or 4 inch, not that wide, just enough that kind of corrals the water. If it's going to back up, it kind of holds it to a specific area. So that is great too. Now, the one thing that makes me cringe is when I see carpet in the basement and anywhere, city, suburbs, anywhere, because
Hmm.
think about carpet. Carpet, it just holds everything, and now it's going to hold that
Yeah.
moisture, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. I would not put carpet in a basement. The only thing to your cement area, though, the only question I have is like, we talked. Was it us that were talking about this last week about the people that would trip and the little pipes coming up in the yard? I
yeah.
just feel like if you're building a little platform or a little step, someone's tripping. I guess I would say make sure you paint it yellow so that you can say that there was warning there and that they shouldn't have tripped over it. But I just see someone falling over that.
Well, the couple of properties I'm thinking of right now, it was like to your point, it was a drain that was towards the furnace, towards the hot water heater, whereas like maybe the second half of the laundry room, or hopefully no one's going, I guess, because if they're tripping on that, they're
Mhm.
gonna hit their head on the ductwork as well at the same time, probably. So hopefully they're safe there. But man, we used to put in tile everywhere, and to finish basements,
Mhm.
and that got costly. And if you want to do it inexpensively, you got to use cheaper tile, which those tiles cracked, especially around Section 8 problems. So when plank floor came out, I remember it was 8533 South Burnham was the first property we tried plank floor in I think it was 2013, and man, that was like, and we did it more so because the floor was uneven and to save labor on the
Mhm.
tile, but the whole water concept, and now everyone's got plank floor everywhere, even in $500,000 houses, or vinyl plank floors. So it's crazy how far that's came, and what a godsend that's become for basements.
No, it's definitely good. And even if you can't find the exact plank, if something goes wrong with them, like my biggest thing with tile, man, is how many times have you had a cracked tile and you're like, this is, I'm not, I'm gonna, and you see it a lot in the South Side, and it's sometimes funny, sometimes not, but you just see, a beautiful, beautiful white tile floor and then the one blue one in the middle because it cracked at some point. They couldn't find. I would say, with plank, you're not getting the crazy designs, so it's easier to blend something in. Whereas some of the tiles that I see are just like the kitchen tiles and stuff like that, where if one cracks and that went out of stock, or they stopped making it because it lasted for 10 years, you're like, well, we can either redo the whole floor or we can make it look silly.
So there's another property manager on the south side that I took this from, but we've ended up because we've been in the same experience. It's like, first I was like, how the hell did you crack so many tiles? That's the first question I always have, but irrelevant. You got to get it fixed. Inspections 3 weeks, and I can't find the tile because it was a 69 cent special that I bought 3 cases of, and is out. So just like you said, but what we've done in the past too is like create designs, like we'll make a border or something like that, or
Yep.
make the middle section like we've actually even gone as far as we did it was like a heart shaped type thing in the middle with tile. So it wasn't a perfect heart, but like if you looked at it, and I don't think
Yeah.
the funny thing is that when we started, I don't think anyone planned for it to look like a heart, but when it was done, it ended up being a heart shape. And that's what we told the tenant, because the tenant's like, oh, I love it. You put a heart in the middle of it. It's Valentine's Day. I'm like, yeah, no, that's exactly why we did it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'll throw a bonus tip out there along the same line. My wife loves accent walls, and we do them on purpose in our house. Uh, but I don't know if you've tried to match older paint when you have most of the walls that are good and one wall that needs painted and you can't match it. We turn that into accent wall. That's my office knows that, like, hey, if this color is going to be really hard to find, or it's not, if it's something that was painted before us, and not one of our colors, and the matching is not going to really be great, just take a color completely opposite and make it an accent wall, and make it a design on it or do something. And it's often cheaper than painting the whole room if everything else looks nice.
I love that tip because even if you match, I mean, you might even know the paint code and you might even have the old paint in the basement, whatever, and you might take a piece off, go take it to Sherwin and match it. The problem you run into is if that wall was, they fade too. So the fresh wall might still be a different color than the damaged wall, and you can't do anything about it just because of age, fading. Maybe it's got a lot of sun, it's going to fade even more. So I love that idea of the accent wall. And I guess one thing that you said there that I guess I don't want to take for granted that everyone thinks this way is you have colors. There's probably 3 colors that, I'd say of our 1,500 properties, probably 40% are these 3 colors. It's like a grayish, a gray, and a beige and a grayish, or so those 3. But
Mhm.
I imagine you guys do something similar, right? Where these are the colors
Yeah, we
our
have the same
go-to
colors,
for.
but like you said, it even if you use the same exact color. So we actually have a rule that it took us a few years to make this rule, but a lot of clients would be like, well, you just have this little spot here on the wall, it needs to be patched. Just patch that and paint it the same color. And we never once had a client that was happy with it. And we would lose money because they would make us repaint it anyways over and over again. And so we have a one wall minimum. If we put paint anywhere, we're painting the whole wall. But to your point, if the same color, same paint, same everything, 5 years of wear on that versus a fresh coat of paint look completely different. Um, and so it's very hard to match. And so we have a one wall minimum for any time we put a paintbrush somewhere. We're going to paint the whole wall. Um, just because it 2-3 years of wear, it looks different than fresh paint, and you can't get it to match. Even when you have a matching system and all that stuff, it's never perfect. So we'll do a one wall minimum with our colors, and it will look good enough for 2 walls next to each other be fine. Or if it's completely a different color that we don't have, we'll do like a white or do like a green or a blue, something out there, sort of as an accent wall. And honestly, we get a lot of people that walk through the apartments, and the accent wall is the selling point. So it saves us money, and then it becomes the selling point.
The
So
the the, uh, the one thing I've been talking to owners a lot more about these last couple of years is stop saving the 40 paint cans that might be the colors in the basement. It's a fire hazard. The paint's not going to be good after probably a year, so it's not like even if you got a full one. Like, so I always tell them, like, listen, just we all have Google or Dropbox these days. Just take a picture of the label because that's probably 90% of the reason you're keeping it. And get rid of the damn paint can. So stop storing paint cans in the basement. They're only going to get thrown out eventually. So that's what we try to do at Takeover if we're starting to manage a new property.
yeah, no, that's yeah. We try to tell everyone we try to have everyone that, hey, there can't be anything in the house because you're not going to get it back. Like if it's if owners come to us and they have a bunch of their personal property in the basement, it's like it's not worth the risk of you leaving it there and something happening to it or whatever. Just go get a storage unit for $20 a month and put it there. But like you said, yeah, paint cans, there's no reason for. Heck, at this point, with AI and some of the apps that like Home Depot and Sherwin-Williams has, you can use your phone and get on the and just sort of take a picture of it or a video of it inside the apps, and they'll match the color for you there. You don't have to take a chip
Yeah,
off
it's
or
crazy.
anything.
You could paint colors, count calories. You can do everything with that iPhone camera these days.
Uh-huh.
And
I
just to
like
think,
the
only 25 years ago, we're running around with just the portable ones they had to take to Walgreens.
uh it's crazy. Our kids will never know the struggles of taking a photo and then going to get developed and realizing the photo didn't come out right, and you didn't take it right, and you got to go back.
85% of my photos were horrible, and it used to piss me off because you think you took such great pictures, and it's like you look at it, it's like, dude, how did I do that? How did I
Everything
mess that
comes
up?
out like this
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
someone's
Or the
thumb.
color, you can't see how dark or light it made it. So we didn't talk about this last week, but a couple weeks ago, I mean, as far as news goes, we have a new assessor that's coming in that got voted in that beat out the incumbent. So I mean, Pat Hines is coming in. I don't know I don't think you had the opportunity to vote for him or if you did or not, but I'm kind of curious what you think about having a new assessor is going to do for other landlords.
I mean, I'm hoping it's good.
Yes.
So real quick, this I as much as I follow it, I'm lost a little bit. But did he win was it just a primary, or does he still have to win one more race, or is he already the assessor fully?
No, on March 17th, he made it. So he will be
Okay, so it
he'll
wasn't just a
be our
primary
new
for him; it was the full. Okay.
I
Um,
believe what happened was he won by so much in this one. Yeah, so I believe that was ultimately the outcome of that. But yeah, no, he's official. And Fritz
no, I mean, I
conceded
don't
and all
see it
that
being. I
stuff.
mean,
So
and it's not just him. Obviously, there has to be other changes too. But it's the taxes are getting crazy because of who they decide. And if you don't understand this, what's been happening the last 4 or 5 years, I don't know what you want to call it, but they've been reassessing all of the big time commercial properties like the Hancock building and stuff like big buildings and lowering how much they're worth. And because of that, all the assessment for your little tiny house has to raise and be worth more to cover the cost. Um, so there's been a lot of randomness in these increases over the last 4 or 5 years. So hopefully you can put a stop to that, shed a little bit more onto these major. eh, Look, I think there's a difference between small businesses and looking out for landlords that have a few hundred properties versus trying to save the guy that owns the water tower $1 million, right? Like that guy's going to be fine. He can pay his fair share of taxes.
yeah.
And right now, the assessor that's got voted out has been doing the opposite. So I think for the average landlord, it'll be good.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. But at the same time, so we had, and I'll throw this in there because I think he did a great job explaining it. We did have Fritz on our on a Straight Chicago Investor podcast. Man, it's like 3-4 years ago, and he did do a good job of explaining that a lot of the job of the assessor is just divvying up who pays what, all right, divvying up what every
Hmm.
property is worth to basically. So it's like a pro rata. Like his job is to basically figure out the pro rata of all the taxes when ultimately the total amount that gets paid on every percentage that everyone owns. You might have 0.00043%, but your percentage is what is the total budget, and the assessor has nothing to do with how much Cook County board, how much their budget is going to be, how much
Yep.
all those different budgets are going to be. I think it just boils down to how much you got to pay up to the city, all those things. So I kind of it's such a lose position in the sense of if they can't take a budget and go from 6 billion down to 4 billion somehow, like versus up to 8 billion, like ultimately the guy that sits in the seat, he can only perfect that math problem or that pro rata share so good, and they're always going to have unhappy people.
Yeah, he's so. I mean, he has the situation that, and going back to corporations versus small businesses versus whatever. He's got the he's got the issue of he has to make someone unhappy, right? You know what? I don't feel that bad for him because we're in property management. That's our job, right? We have to please both the tenant and the landlord, and oftentimes we're spending the landlord's money or we're telling the tenant no. The other one's not happy. So uh, we're sort of used to that kind of a job, but you got to make decisions, and I think that Fritz's decisions have been a lot more towards major corporations and things like that, and even to a point, I've thrown this out before of like foreign interests. Why do we have so many vacant buildings that are not being taxed right now and being left vacant? Purposely because it's cheaper. It's better to keep them vacant and not pay taxes than to actually rent them out. So decisions like that are being made are I think what hurts the not only common homeowner but common landlord or smaller landlords when you're all of a sudden your house is getting charged crazy amounts.
But that ends up being a function of the process, right? The guy
Hmm.
that might be out of state investor that holds a property, or listen, I've advised our commercial owners in Cook County at times, like, we're better off not renting this 4,000 square feet
Hmm.
because your tax can go up and we can't get the vacancy claim anymore. But that's because the overall system is broken.
Yes.
Here's the thing: I was one more point here. No one talks about that like that in DuPage County. No one's like, yeah, should I leave this 4,000 empty or should I rent it for a couple bucks under market just to get somebody in there? No, they put that person for a couple bucks under market in there all day. So it ends up being a Cook County conversation that ends up being broken.
And then you have, areas like, I would say you can make the argument that on the south side and things like that, there's going to be vacancies and stuff in some of these. But when you walk up and down Clark Street around Wrigleyville and you're in one of the most what was the word? Areas where there's the most people, most tourists, things like that, and you have vacant property, it makes the city look like shit. It makes, it's bad for everyone. It's bad for small businesses that can't. How often have you seen in the last 5 years a restaurant or a store that you like that was doing okay, and all of a sudden the landlord got greedy and doubled the rent, and now that property's been vacant for 2 years? I mean, I know a ton of friends that have had businesses that either had to move or just shut down because rent got out of control. And you look back and it's 2 years and they still haven't re-rented it. So
here, I'll speak to your exact example. So we actually interviewed Alderman Lawson, who is Lakeview Alderman, on Monday. We went to his office, and
Nice.
his thing is instead of having this vacant space that does no benefit to the neighborhood, he's been working to convert that to ADU. So I'm sorry, convert that to residential. And he was the guy that led the whole pilot program initially back in 2020 or 2021, and then helped convert it to what it is now. But yeah, so he sees but again, he's a person that's in charge, can make decisions. And his only thing is to do is, hey, let's just move away from the whole concept. Let's just turn it into residential, because people of mixed use really get screwed. Especially when you're in your neck of the woods in the south side. Think about a storefront on the south side. You don't get much more rent per square foot than you do for the 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment upstairs. I always tell people when they're looking in the south side or call it CD type areas, it might be west side as well too, that if the building runs without any of the retail being rented, then make sure that's the case. Make sure your place is profitable without, and if you do rent out the retail, it's only a benefit. Or if someday you get the opportunity to convert it or do something special with that space.
So speaking of ADUs, have we talked about the map yet, and the ordinance that finally passed where ADUs are officially aldermanic prerogative? Say that word better for me.
Prerogative.
Prerogative, yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna try something new here. Can we share screen? Let me get out of let me make sure I'm not I think I shared that. I'm hoping people can see it.
Yeah, you shared it.
All right, cool. So there are on this map 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different colors, a couple different shades of green. This is not going to be confusing to anyone, the way that it worked out. So there's 23 aldermen that fully opted in, meaning that you can go and get an ADU.
And that's your dark green, right?
What was that?
That's your dark green?
Yeah, that's dark green. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then light green partially are in. And then the orange is going to be not opted in, and gray is not eligible, which I don't know why. I think that's just downtown area. But even within that area, all these dark green, and I can't find that map, all have different limitations to how many they can have a year, how many can be on each block, how many. So it's going to be a super interesting few years, I think, of figuring this out. And I think unlike any other major city, or maybe it is like other major cities, I just don't know about it, but we get a lot of people that come to us and ask us, like, so can I get the third unit applied for, or can I do this? And the answer honestly is going to be like, does your alderman like you? Have you donated to his campaign yet? And is it going to be worth it? Because I don't think if you think there's 100,000 illegal units, I don't think very many of them would get converted to legal, because I think the process is still going to be too expensive. But you might get people that try to, if they don't have a unit now, and instead of risking it, try to build the right way. But I think, again, Chicago's doing a quote unquote good thing, but putting so much red tape on it that I don't know. What are your thoughts about the new program?
Well, a couple of things. It's hard to not talk negative about it because you and me just have been in the trenches seeing it. But a couple of the things that stand out to me is if you have a 6 unit. So we've never talked about it in here, but if you have 7 units, you can qualify, and you've put if you've done a rehab or put some money into the property in the previous, I think 2 or 5 years at some large look back time period, you can qualify for a fairly large tax break. I forget what it's called. I could put a link to it. That was actually something else we talked with CIC and Fritz on a few years back. But so if you're going for there, so sometimes those costs of converting a new unit or creating a new unit, you'll get the benefits of the tax write-offs. Now, that to be part of that program, I believe one of the units has to be affordable. But if you're putting a garden apartment in almost anywhere in the city, you should be able to hit below what's it, AMI, that metric. But when I was talking to Alderman Lawson on Monday, one of the things he was saying that that really got me thinking, like, oh, if people did this could actually be beneficial. If you take like a courtyard building, a 24 or 36 unit type courtyard building, and you built out all the gardens, which a lot of those have tall ceilings, you could start putting in 7, 8 units per courtyard in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And again, those will probably be for just the, not talking about that tax incentive I was talking about, just for this program that's rolling out this month. If you put one in, if you add one new unit, it doesn't matter who rents it. But if you put a second one in, it has to be affordable. So that, and then I think above that, it starts to be some, like you were talking about, based on the alderman, it becomes negotiable of how much has to be what and what has to be done. So that there is some incentive there. Now, I think the biggest win we could have as to help for the housing side of things is, all the units right now that are illegal or called non-conforming, I don't care if those get legalized or not. It's, can we add addition, because those are already part of the unofficial housing stock.
Yeah, there are people already living.
Yeah. So it's like there's no, maybe the city wants to be valid, or the city doesn't want. Maybe they can pick up the tax roll. That's the other thing we talk about, Alderman. Man, the easier they allow to add units, ultimately the taxes are going to go up. And you or me, if we're able to add another unit, we'd be happy paying another $1,200 in taxes a year, times however many they could crank out. So there could be such a plus on that as well too. But the one point he brought up was the tax revenue side of things and the alderman side. It's 2 different departments. So a lot of those conversations, even though it makes sense holistically, those conversations aren't even entertained most of the time when you have a group full of aldermen.
Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna make a point, and then I want to ask a question or say something to you or whatever. But to what you were saying first, like, I think same thing with all the red tape to build new properties. Like, there's so much red tape to build on these vacant land that if Chicago just let it happen and let people build, the amount of new properties you'd have and the amount of taxes, that it would solve a lot of the problems that we're talking about with this. The other thing I want to talk about, they were talking about this at the MBOA event, and I don't think a whole lot of people realize this. We were talking about the budget, right, and the taxes. So the assessor has to divide. The assessors, they tell the assessor, you need to raise $1 billion, and the assessor's dividing that $1 billion, right? But a lot of people, I think, look at the budget and go, okay, it's just, the alderman, or it's the budget of Cook County, et cetera. I think the one thing that escapes people, and for the first time ever, we're going to be able to vote on it if you live in Chicago, is that the budget for taxes comes, and then the school board has their own budget that gets put on top of that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And for the first time this year, right? I think in November we get to vote if you live in Chicago. I know we're both suburban people now, but for the Chicagoans, we're going to be able to vote on the school board, and what they choose to do budget wise directly affects the city of Chicago taxes, or the property taxes.
Yeah, that's huge. And they didn't want that to happen for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's almost necessary. I read an article the other day, and I don't know where this could ever go, but they're actually opening up a school. Where was it? It was in an Old Town, Lakeview, somewhere. They're opening a K-8 AI school. That's all ran by AI.
Oh, I saw that.
It's AI teaching. So it makes you wonder. And this same school that's opening up this has what's the right word? Is it charters? They have legal charters
Yeah.
to be. I forgot their terminology, but they become a legit schooling system. So, and
No,
top of
it's a
all,
legit schooling system. You want to know the most? I read the same article. You want to know the most disappointing part?
it's run by teachers.
No, did you see the tuition?
Oh, dude, it's expensive, right? Yeah, it was like
It's like 30, it's like 20 grand, 30, like only rich people are going to be able to send their kids to this, which as a consumer, not just for schooling stuff, but just everything, my hope is that AI might reduce costs for things. But this is the first sign that like companies are going to make more money with AI, but they're not going to reduce prices for anything.
Yeah, I'm hoping though eventually that will, because in the end of the day, it's really the overhead costs that if they could play with that and get that down. Now, again, all the teachers out there, nothing against you, but obviously, I think the bigger problem you have in the city is just Rom came in and shut down all those schools and people made a big deal. But can you imagine where the school board would be today if they didn't make all those cuts when they had to?
Yeah, 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 and it's still they're talking about CTU's talking about. I just saw Green or whatever Jamal Green posted something that CTU's planning on striking again soon. So you're going to see, depending on how this board goes, and it could be both ways. Does it go too far to one side where we save taxes but the school's shut down CTU, or does it go to the other way where there's got to be some kind of balance? Um, and I think just when there isn't a vote in, I think what we saw over the last 10 years is that whoever's mayor, right now Johnson is a big CTU. He's from CTU. He's from the school. So the people that he's been putting in or were going to put in were very teacher friendly. Um, again, not that that's a bad thing, but when it comes at the cost of people losing their housing and things like that because of taxes, it's a little bit different of a story. The other one story, speaking of politics that I've been following, returning with TMZ of Chicago real estate, but have you been following at all the whole CHA CEO thing?
I was going to ask you about that. If you want to give that a summary, I have been. It's kind of crazy in itself.
Yeah. So they fired the CEO of CHA, which I think this is the second time in like 3 years now. So they have not had a good chance. And basically, Johnson handpicked one of the aldermen that he was going to try to put into it, to the point where the alderman stepped down. And this is like where it's a bad, like, this is not good. The alderman stepped down early so that his son could become alderman without anyone voting. Right, that's the first issue. Is like that's shady in itself. But however, so he steps down and he goes to take up the position, and the board for CHA, who Johnson's been fighting with, decides to hire a ex CEO from Washington D.C.'s CHA. So now they're battling because Johnson can't appoint someone without them voting, and they voted for someone else, but he wants that person to step down because Johnson has. It's a weird thing. He can fire them, but he can't pick them. So Johnson's threatening to fire the guy that they just put in because it's not the guy that Johnson wants, and that's where we're at.
And this guy from Washington, like he's locked in. Like they hired him. They signed an agreement. Like I just think about
he's locked in. He doesn't plan on going anywhere. And frankly, like, this guy's ran one of the biggest Section 8. DC is one of the bigger Section 8 programs out there.
Yes.
So, he has experience running that, and our program is so slow and so messed up that it'd be great to actually have someone with experience running it versus, I think it's Burnett is the alderman.
It is Willie Burnett. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone that has no experience in that trying to run it. I mean, not saying it would be a simple fix, but I mean, if you look at like just their inspections, have you ever talked to their inspectors on their routes? Like, their inspectors quit like once every 6 months, which is the first problem.
Yeah.
But like, these guys now, mind you, for anyone that doesn't know, CHA doesn't call you and ask you like what appointment you want. It's they call you the night before and say, hey, we'll be here at this time. But these guys are running from like Lincoln Park down to South Shore for their second appointment, then back to Rogers Park for their third appointment, and then to like Roseland for their fourth appointment. Like the routing makes no sense most of the time for these guys.
We'll have
And
inspections 3 in a neighborhood on one day, and it'll be 3 different inspectors. It's like, man, like how does that even happen? Like,
what? Why would you not? Why? How? Like, just something as simple as that, getting a routing system, because that's honestly, at least in Chicago, people don't complain about like you hear sometimes people talk about Section 8 tenants or bad tenants. I haven't had that experience. Obviously, there are bad apples, but there's bad market tenants too, right? But like overall, people on CHA aren't bad tenants, but the program's really bad. And so when the program's really bad, landlords don't want to jump through 1,000 hoops for it. And this is something. I mean, if you cut the time for inspections down in half, how many more landlords would be willing to? Now I know you can't say no, but how many more landlords would be more cooperative in getting the process done? You know.
well, I think too, because the organization is so chaotic, lack of better words, there ends up being less repercussions for tenants. So you do have some tenants that the ones that are rough or not as great or not as outstanding, they'll push the limit a little more because it's like, what are you gonna do? You're probably not.
Yeah.
Even if you report me, I'll probably be able to get out of it. So out here at DuPage or Kane or Elgin or Aurora, like if in those different, that's all the different ones that we work with out here. Man, if a tenant destroys a place, I call up the board and or the housing
Yes.
housing group, and
Housing. Yeah.
they'll send someone out like the next day, pissed, and the tenant will get in trouble. Like, and I'll get a letter saying, "Hey, we're gonna work with the tenant, but if this can't work out, then we might have to work on eviction process, which we'll help you with." And like it's like, so it's night and day with some of that stuff. And the crazy thing that you're saying, and this is why shows like this exist, you and me out there showing people the ins and outs, because in a system like CHA, you have to figure out all the ins and outs. It's not cut and dry. A guy from DuPage County can't go and start doing Section 8 in Chicago and have the same experience. He's got to figure out all these different tricks and hoops and do this, don't do that. And so it's kind of crazy, but that gives us job security for not only our property management, but for being out here and talking to the world about what we see and how to handle it.
For sure. I mean, it's to the point even, and that's what I'm saying. Like Section 8 itself, from a federal level, isn't a bad program because Cook County isn't that bad. Like you said, DuPage isn't that bad. It's the city, and it's to the point. I almost think they feel almost entitled that, hey, you have to accept our tenants, so we're not gonna make it easy. And the smart landlords are realizing, yeah, I have to accept the tenant, but I don't have to, like, you're not going to accept me. So that's fine. Like, that's fine. I'm not going to do a bunch of little tasks to fix things that a market tenant would take and not have any issues with. So some landlords are just fighting it that way. And other landlords are finding tenants that can move in 2 weeks versus it taking 3 months. So there's a lot of ways that landlords aren't working with them, even though they are working with them. But the other one is pricing, right? In Chicago, I don't know how many more you have left, but like, how often do you get a price and it's below market, or they throw you something and say, oh yeah, we're only going to pay you, you want 1,500, but we're going to pay you 13.
Yeah, the
And they
predictability is
expect
so
you to
much
take
lower.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out in DuPage or the Collar counties, you know what you're going to get. Heck,
Mhm.
Cook County does it before. Like it's great in the sense of
Yeah.
you could market based on it. So yeah. So getting towards the end here, wrapping up. If anyone has any questions about Section 8, you can reach out to us. Should probably talk about this more on here. Maybe do a whole show
sure.
1 week. But there's so much around Section 8, and I think there's such great pros, even though there are cons. I do think the funny thing, Tim, on our website, maybe you should do more of this too if you're not already. Our number one page is Section 8, our Section 8 resource page, because so many people now, we have a lot of tenants that land on there and ask us questions as well too. So we try to help them where we can, but we don't always. But this is such a topic that everyone's always curious about and wondering about and exploring. So we should definitely help Chicago landlords with this more. So any final thoughts before we part ways here?
No, I mean, I'll follow up with that. We have a ton of, I know you guys do as well, but honestly, half the Section 8 stuff that if you Google it, one of our websites is probably going to pop up, one or two. Like I know I've Googled some things where we're ahead of CHA's own thing because we explain it a little bit better than they do and break it down. So take a look at our, go to chicagostylemanagement.com and over to the about and the blog page. You'll be able to see a lot on CHA, and I know Mark's site has a ton too.
All right, Tim. Well, thank you for joining me here for week 12 of Chicago Landlord Secrets. I actually wake up on Thursdays excited to do the show, so hopefully you feel the same way, or at least you pretend in a good way too. So, listeners, if you have any questions about tenant placement or property management or just overall, like I'm not sure what to do because I have this type of problem, you can reach out to Tim or myself. Wherever you're watching this from, you could comment and we'll catch that. Or you could definitely go to one of our websites, which you can see right here, and do the contact page, or you can find me on Instagram, Tim on Instagram. Tim's all over TikTok as well too. So anyway, we can help you. We're here for you. If anything, share this with the recorded show with a friend, another Chicago investor that might see value in this. So thank you everyone that's tuned in today and in the future. And Tim, I'll see you next week.
See you next week.